Okay, inshallah. طيب. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Hope everyone is good, inshallah, and Allah bless everyone. So I to make sure here that I'm properly situated. I'm just going to hold this in my hand like this, easier, so no one walks in the back. Okay, طيب. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruh. ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، جزاكم الله خير. We live in times of difficulty, and this morning I was reading through Imam Bukhari's work on the signs of the Day of Judgment, and one of the things that he mentions in one of the hadith is that there will be a time when a man will be responsible for 50 women. 50, imagine that. And responsibility in Arabic is mas'uliyah. Okay. Yani it comes from, basically it's linked to the word sa'ala or su'al, or being asked about. Okay, responsibility, you'll be asked about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you about something. And this is an amana. Now, what is amana? Again, it is a responsibility that is entrusted to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is an amana for us to carry as Muslims, and we find that that is being distorted. Families are an amana, and we find that that is being corrupted. This dunya is an amana, and we find that it's being polluted and corrupted. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in this is an amana, and we find that this is slowly being worn off. And I think it is the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib, if I'm correct, same book, where the Prophet ﷺ said that Islam is going to become like a worn off clothing. Basically, it's going to be like people are just going to get, it's going to give you worn off. Now, does Islam somehow change? No, not Islam, but people are going to do that, where it's not going to be in its original organic form anymore, to the point that there will be a time, and I think Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman is asked about this, there will be a time where there'll be people who will only know La ilaha illallah, not even Muhammad Rasulullah, just La ilaha illallah. That's it. Nothing to do with anything else from Islam. So some of those signs we see today. Definitely we see that responsibility on men is huge, yet can they actually hold it? Where are men today in terms of their position, their strength? Well, if we're honest with ourselves as men, starting with myself as a man, we're far, far away from where we're supposed to be. Okay. And I know people might think that we as men sometimes criticize and we pick on women, this and that. But that is because we have a responsibility to correct them. You have to understand. And I repeat again, a woman is not going to be asked about, in general, about her husband, what he did, because she's not responsible for him. She'll be asked about her children, about the household of her husband. And we will see, inshallah, from the hadith in Bukhari Muslim about the mas'uliyah, the responsibility. But you have to understand, a man will be asked about his parents, his wife, his children, his money, his this, that, his everything. Okay? And that's why a man has to check his family, has to check his wife, has to check those below him, as a president will check his parliament, as the wazir will check his subjects. Everyone has to check, as a CEO will check his company. Why? Because there's a hierarchy That needs to be understood. However, in today's world where everything is based on so-called, it's a pseudo equality, actually. It's not real. It's a pseudo equality. A lot of people think that there's equality. It's not. But because of the pseudo equality, this perception, people, they don't want to hear about a hierarchy, about a ladder, that there is certain their tabaqat, their levels. So for example, Allah is above everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Maliki Yawmiddin. He asks, he's not asked. Okay, no one can ask Allah. Okay. Below, obviously, Angel Jibreel will bring the revelation. So the angels do the work. Then below them, the prophets, okay, do the work of conveying the message. Below them is the Khalifa or the Khulafa. And below them are their amirs. And below them are the men. And below them are the women. And below them are the children. So that's how it works. Now you say, where'd you take this misogynistic interpretation? It's not an interpretation. It's what the Prophet ﷺ told us. This is how Islam teaches. So at each level, there's an extra layer of responsibility. Okay, so women have responsibility, but there's a different level than men's responsibility. And men have a different responsibility than Khalifa's responsibility, for example. There's a different responsibility of the Prophet's responsibility. Okay, so everyone has a certain responsibility, but we live in a time where men, us, just your average man, needs to even understand what their responsibility is. The average woman, she doesn't understand what their response. She wants to have the responsibility of a man these days, and sometimes the man want to have the responsibility of a woman, right? So now she wants to climb up the ladder while the man wants to go down the ladder, and that unbalances what Allah has made as the mizan of this dunya. أَلَا تَتَغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. You cannot unbalance the mizan that Allah has given us in everything. When we do in the name of equality or this pseudo-equality, it basically causes confusion. And indeed, I would like to say that we live in a confused world. I mean, people are having trouble with basics of biology, of genetics, of understanding whether they're a man or a woman. So imagine, this is unprecedented, actually, to this scale, to this level. We've seen in history before certain, of course, events and elements of this, but this is unprecedented on this scale. Okay, you have to understand that. But when we look at the hadith and the evidence for the scale of responsibility, specifically for us as men, if we are the ones who are in charge, okay, we keep saying we are Qawwam, we are the people who are responsible, then we have to understand that it is our fault if things go bad, first and foremost. Now, yes, we criticize, yes, we push back on different elements of society. Be them, okay, children are, for example, very, very unsubordinate to parents these days. They're very rude. They answer back. They're disobedient, right? Well, it's to an extent, yes, we can blame Netflix, Instagram, social media, all these things, the changes, the school. But bottom line is our responsibility because we carry this responsibility. We're accountable for it. Same thing. We can blame women. And yes, there's a lot of things that feminism has done, women have done in terms of stepping out of their given niche and their given bia or environment that Allah has given them. But in the end of the day, it is man's fault that we allow things to happen to this extent, to the corruption that he has left. Right? So men are first and foremost responsible. Allah created Adam first. Allah made the Khalifa Adam, not Eve. Allah made the Khulafa, men, not women. Allah has made the prophets, men, not women. Why? Because they carry the responsibility. But it comes with not just authority as men want to claim. I mean, it's nice to claim authority, to empower yourself and say, I'm the one who's the leader. That's authority. But accountability and responsibility. Okay, so responsibility is that amana. Okay, the power and empowerment. Okay, this is the 𝐤𝐴زدة and the quwwah that Allah has given us, and the huquq or the rights of having this authority. But then comes with it the mas'uliyah, okay, the accountability, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only in this dunya, but in the akhirah. So, the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Every one of you is the shepherd. Now here it is general, كُلُّكُمْ. And every one of you is responsible for a sheep. Every one of us, meaning men, women, everyone is responsible. Okay, every single one. And then he said that فَالْإِمَامُ رَاعٍ وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. And the imam, the leader, the president, the khalifa, whatever, or the imam of the mosque, he is a shepherd, right? We know the other hadith of the Prophet saying that all the prophets were shepherds, right? It teaches them to lead. There's a responsibility. But you see, you can be a leader and a shepherd at different levels. So the imam is one, president is one. Whoever's in power is a shepherd, and he is responsible on the people below him. Okay. Then the hadith goes and says, وَالرَّجُلُ, and the man, right, في أهله, in his family. Okay. وهو مسؤول عن رعيته, and he is مسؤول, he is responsible for who? His wife, his أهلي, أهل البيت يعني. The people of the family will be based his daughters, his sons, his wives. Okay, and he is responsible for those people. So now we see that there is a hierarchy of responsibility. And then it doesn't stop there. And then it says, وَالْمَرْأَةُ, and the female, here, she is raya. She is a female shepherd. رَايَةٌ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا, in the house of her husband. وَهِيَ, and she is now مسؤولة عن رعيتها, and she is now responsible for her flock. Okay, so everyone is على وكلكم راعي وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. Every one of you is a shepherd. Everyone is responsible. Now, how do we balance this responsibility with empathy and understanding? Well, this is a difficult balance that if we want to answer that question, we first and foremost have to be very, very familiar with the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because he is the best example of that. Now, how far are we from the sunnah? That's another story. But if anyone asks, for example, when they ask me, I know I do masculinity courses, this and that. People ask me, like, how do I know what's the best man of the most? And I say, first and foremost, I say, you need to study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. If someone asks me, how do I know how to be a good husband? You need to study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Someone asks me, how do I know how to be a good this or a good that? You need to study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Clear. That's when we know with context, with the clear definitions as to what does it mean to have this balance between responsibility and empathy. How do we approach this, right? How do we balance it? The Prophet was the best example of how he did. So that's the first starting point. But if I am to take a few points from my studies of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, I would pick the following. And it's not just the theory, but actual practice that we need to obviously implement. So number one, to have the balance between responsibility and empathy, you have to have knowledge. A man, a husband has to study. Too many men, they have no knowledge. And Jazakallah for organizing conferences like this, because this spreads knowledge. How many men are attending this? I don't know. I don't know really. Maybe Brother Safwan can tell me at the end. But guys are not interested in seeking knowledge these days. Not very much in educating themselves. And this is a big musibah. It's a big problem. So how do you know what you have to do unless you actually learn? How do you know that balance? What I said, seerah, how can you learn seerah if you don't go back to it and study it? Right? So knowledge is number one to keep that balance. Number two, there has to be strength. You have to have strength. Okay, why? Because see, responsibility doesn't come with being passive. Even though the world today wants men to be passive and have come up with so many labels, destabilizers such as toxicity, oppression, such as narcissism, gaslighting, and so many things. Now, a lot of these terms might have, of course, very, very strong evidence for them. But I think they're being used so loose a lot of times to define a man who has some limits and has some strength in what? In implementing the responsibility that's upon him. Right? So a man you have to understand, if our wives, our daughters, our sons are misbehaving Islamically, they're being twisted by TikTok and Barbie movies and music and all kinds of things, it's our responsibility to put our foot down. I mean, that's just the way it is. Whether you can do it or not, that's another story. But we cannot change that. We cannot change that this is something that we need to do, that is upon us as men, and that we will be asked about it and punished if not. So, but a man has to have some strength because he will be faced with resistance. The whole world is saying to those below us, and below here means in terms of hierarchy and responsibility, that they can just do whatever they want, that there is no hierarchy, that we're the same and equal, that a boy, a child can divorce his parents if he wants to. In certain Western countries, you can do that. You can put a restriction order on them. They're told that everyone's the same, that you cannot hold anyone accountable, that everyone can just do whatever. That you cannot raise your children anymore. The government and the system will raise them. And that is the biggest musibah ever. No, a man needs to put his foot down. That's why this happened, because we didn't put our foot down when we had to do it. Okay, we kind of just, in the name of empowerment, equality, we thought that, hey, you know what? Maybe we have to give some leeway. That inch became a mile. That's the reality, and you know it. Just look around. Are you happy with the condition of the people below us? Forget about ourselves. Are we happy with our own condition? Or no? Right? So we need to have strength. There's too much mercy can lead to destruction. Okay, and that's why Christianity is doomed. Because they have too much mercy. Everything's about love and mercy. I know it sounds weird, but look at the evidence. They left the Sharia. What is the foundation of Christianity? That there is no Sharia, there is no law. Okay, there is no punishments that are implemented in this world. And it's been abrogated with just one verse, which is, by the way, an infiltration into the scriptures, not even a real verse. Okay, but that's what they are. It's all love. Give the other cheek. This is ludicrous. How do you give the other cheek? Right? Everything is about love. Everything is about sacrifice. Everything is about this, about everyone. Jesus loves everyone. So you see, this is where mercy goes to the extreme and is destructive. Yet, when you look at the Jews, that's why Allah says in the Quran, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. So not the path of those who have earned your anger, not of those who have gone astray. Okay? Now who they are, as Ibn Kathir says, these are the Jews and the Christians. Now when you look at the Bani Israel, just laws, rules, regulations, there's no mercy, no empathy. I mean, you'll find in a text, I'm not saying that there isn't. Sorry, let me rephrase that so I don't do injustice to them. It's not correct. It's just that they don't really emphasize on it. It's there. It's there in the Old Testament. It's there. I apologize. Let me rephrase that because I don't want to do what they do to us. But it's not practiced and emphasized. Same thing in the New Testament and the Bible. There is laws and rules, but they don't emphasize and practice. You see, so there's two extremes here, one of strength, too much strength, and one of too much mercy. And both are destructive. That's why in Surah Fatiha we say, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. Not this one, not that one. Which one is it? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, the straight path. Okay. Path by who? It's the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's the Ark of Noah, as Imam Malik says, rahimahullah, the Sunnah, following that example of knowing the right balance. What we are faced with today in our societies, we have within the Dawah, for example, we have the Imams who are extremely compassionate, and they've been called compassionate Imams, all right, because it's just about being civil and being politically correct. And then you have those who are just about destruction. Okay, again, two extremes. And none of them are right. Why? Because I say so, or because it's not politically correct? No, it's because that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. But these times of strength, times of mercy, depends on the situation. But no one will deny the other side. Today, we are in a position where it's just extremes. So we need to have strength and mercy and so on. Next, after strength, there has to be love. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ, he loved his ummah. And that's why you see in his da'wah that even though there was strength, he fought with Abu Sufyan. He fought with Sahaba. He fought who then later obviously became Sahaba like Khalid bin Walid. But then there was love, there's no hatred. Because when those people reverted to Islam, then they were just taken in, right? Today, it seems like when we do da'wah, it's just like who can get up one on the other person, even amongst the Muslims, even with the Christians. It's like not about guiding them and maybe bringing them to the truth. It's about like who's going to have the final argument, the final say. While debates and discussions and fights and arguments have a position, no doubt, but we have to be careful with our intentions. As men, we have to understand that there has to be love in our responsibilities and everything that we deal with, the aman of our families or everyone. There has to be passion. Prophet ﷺ loved and cried for his ummah. He used to say that I am like that person who stops you from the fire. You're like flies, you're trying to go towards it. I'm just trying to stop you, but you insist on going inside. It is 𝐤𝐴Z𝐷 and just go to Jahannam. Yeah, there's been some sometimes we're even cursed the enemies of Islam, 100%. There's time for that. Yes. I know some people say that never. Yes, he did. He did. Okay. And he called the wrath of Allah upon them. Yes, he did. Okay. But there's also many times where he was just very merciful. So again, balance. Right? But a man has to understand that he needs strength and he needs softness. It depends on the situation. Sometimes you have to use both, sometimes only one, but you cannot deny the other one. So we need knowledge, we need strength, we need love and passion. Okay, we need understanding. All right, we need understanding where we just don't want to talk, but we listen. And that's another difficult challenge. Okay, to listen, to understand, listening for understanding, listening for comprehension. Very important. To be a leader, you need to listen. Next, to be a leader, you need to ignore. If you just listen to everyone and everyone's opinion, and it's just this, what is it? This democracy? No. A man has to put his foot down sometimes and he has to ignore. Okay. So Imam Shafi used to say that it does not befit sometimes the lions to answer to the barking dogs. Some people are going to criticize it. People are going to talk. People are going to do all kinds of things. Bottom line is sometimes you don't listen. As a leader, you need to know when you're responsible to be a strong leader of your family. You cannot take everyone's opinion. You cannot listen to every discourse. You have to ignore sometimes. And that's how the Prophet ﷺ did it. He wasn't caught up in every argument and every silly thing. Sometimes you have to ignore. Okay, you don't listen. You see? So power, mercy, softness, strength, softness, love, compassion, sometimes requires a hatred. Okay, to hate something. Yes, indeed, hatred. Okay. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells about, for example, returning back to kufr, to hate that, like being thrown in hellfire or in the fire, to hate it like that. So hate is a very important emotion that we have to understand. Okay. And listening and comprehend understanding and sometimes ignoring. So that balance is always, there's never just one thing. Okay, the only thing that we have in Islam that is an extreme and is an absolute is Tawheed, is the oneness of Allah. That's it. Other than that, there's good. Sometimes you have to be not so good. Okay, now maybe people misunderstand that, but that's how it is. Okay, sometimes you're gonna have to be merciful, sometimes you're gonna have to be ruthless. And we know very clearly from the Battle of Badr that the Prophet was just too merciful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sided with Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu. Okay, there. And if you see what he was told to do, then you would be like, okay, that's too much. So we cannot, in our minds, we would think that's insane because that's the problem though. We've reached a point where we're just sometimes too merciful. And yet sometimes you find people who have no mercy, no justice in them, no righteousness. So again, extremes. So I could say a lot more about this, but these are just basics. I just wanted to scratch the surface. Maybe if you take anything from me, understand those points, the balance, and the fact that you should go and dig deep into the seerah of the Prophet and to really understand what does it mean to be a leader, a responsible, how to balance that responsibility and accountability with mercy and empathy to be leaders and everyone and be as the hadith of the shepherd's goal. You see, study that hadith in Bukhari Muslim, that there's a hierarchy and everyone is responsible for something. Barakallahu feekum, jazakallah khair.